Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. Ethan didn't come to pick me up at the agreed time for our wedding. That was when I realized he had been reborn too. In our past life, I was known by everyone as the perfect wife and loving mother. I helped him succeed in his career, supported his parents, managed the household with thrift and care, treated guests properly, and never made a single mistake. Yet he hated me for a lifetime just because his beloved Emily Tang borrowed money from me and ended up at an unlicensed clinic, where she lost the ability to become a mother forever. Emily then left for another place, becoming the deepest regret in Ethan's life. So after being reborn, Ethan made a choice to humiliate me on our wedding day to teach me a lesson. He waited until he felt I'd suffered enough, and only then brought gifts to propose again. But by that time, I was already 8 months pregnant, and had followed my husband on his military assignment to India. Everyone was urging me to go check outside. It was getting late. Why hadn't the groom's procession arrived? My parents and relatives were extremely anxious, going back and forth to the village entrance to look out for them. After several hours of waiting in vain, they sent out several groups to the neighboring village to ask around Ethan's home. Eventually we confirmed the truth. The Miller family had backed out of the wedding. My father was so furious, he slammed the table and glared. "This is outrageous. They're humiliating us on purpose," he shouted. He immediately contacted a matchmaker and went with people to the Miller house to demand an explanation. But when they arrived, the gates were tightly shut and no one answered. My parents, exhausted and heartbroken, both fell ill that very night. I came back to this life just a bit too late. Seeing my parents lying on the bed worried about me, my heart was unexpectedly filled with joy. In my previous life, I had taken the dowry my parents carefully prepared and married into the Miller family. I respected my in-laws and cared for my sister-in-law. The Miller family was poor, so I took care of all the social obligations. When Ethan's sister, Anna Miller, wanted to study abroad in 1995, it was me who sold off a courtyard house under my name just to barely gather the money she needed. With the backing of my generous dowry, Ethan rose steadily in his career. Eventually, he seized a golden opportunity and soared to success. The Millers transformed from nobodies in a remote mountain village to new elites in Northbridge City. As they rose, I was praised as the woman who brought them fortune. But Ethan was never content. He never accepted me. The second half of our marriage crumbled under his repeated outbursts and accusations. "I regret marrying you, Jessica," he once shouted. "You gave that money to Emily on purpose. You destroyed her life." By then, he had already brought Emily Tang back from abroad. The two of them went everywhere together in public, all lovey-dovey, not caring at all about my feelings as his wife. His sweet, doting mother and thoughtful sister always tried to persuade me. "Jessica, you should be more tolerant. Times are different now. What rich man doesn't have multiple women? The fact that my son still keeps you as his wife says a lot." Even my own son stood on their side and argued with me. "Mom, just be content. Aunt Emily can't have kids. She's not fighting for the inheritance. Dad just wants to give her a proper title. So what? Go ask around which wealthy family doesn't have a few illegitimate children since Aunt Emily has Dad wrapped around her finger. He doesn't even want more kids with anyone else. What more do you want? Do you even know how hard it is for me to juggle things between Dad, Grandma, and Aunt Anna every day?" I didn't know what exactly I was dissatisfied with. I only knew that every time my elderly parents saw Ethan in the tabloids, they were heartbroken for me. My father, a retired soldier who believed real men bleed but don't cry, wept in silence late at night, hiding it from my mother. He passed away with his eyes wide open, unable to rest in peace. That failed marriage shattered my family's hearts. The luxury and splendor seen by outsiders were nothing more than a fancy robe crawling with lice. No one knew how much pain and bitterness I had endured. So, after I was reborn, when everyone around me was outraged and scolding Ethan for abandoning the wedding, I was the only one who felt deeply relieved. Thank goodness, everything could still be changed. While my parents were at the Miller house with people trying to confront them, I went alone to the marriage registration office in town and retrieved the marriage certificate that hadn't been stamped yet. In my past life, I had forgotten to bring the certificate with the official seal on our wedding day. The kind and understanding woman at the counter had said warmly, "Just leave it here. Once you get the stamped document, bring it back and I'll finish processing it for you. No need to make an extra trip." I handed her the milk candy I had prepared in my pocket and took back the unstamped certificate. "Thank you," I said, bowing as tears streamed down my face. On my way home, the car passed through a quiet alley, and I caught a glimpse of a familiar figure. Ethan was holding Emily Tang tightly in his arms, his expression full of joy. "Emily," he said, overwhelmed. "This time, I won't let you face everything alone. I'll take full responsibility as the father." She blushed shyly, her cheeks glowing pink. But when Emily inadvertently met my gaze, she panicked, visibly flustered. I turned my head away, cold and indifferent. I no longer cared about Ethan from my past life. Ethan had always believed that the baby Emily carried was his. Only she and I knew the truth. It wasn't. That child belonged to one of her college professors. A charming young woman and a cultured married man had fallen for each other at first sight. Their forbidden love was intoxicating, consuming them completely. But later, in pursuit of fame and success, the man chose to go abroad with his wife. He left quietly, abandoning her without a word. Emily was devastated. When she discovered she was pregnant, panic and fear overwhelmed her. That's when she set her sights on the ever-loyal backup, Ethan. She got him drunk, trying to force a night together, hoping to turn a lie into reality. I happened to walk in and stopped it. Emily collapsed in front of me, sobbing and begging for mercy. "Jessica, please lend me some money. I'll get rid of the baby. I'll use Ethan's name just for this. I swear no one else will know." I don't even know what I was thinking back then. Maybe it was empathy. Maybe it was pity for another woman betrayed by love. In the end, I kept her secret. Ethan woke up thinking he had spent the night with his beloved Emily. Later, when he learned about her abortion and the fact that she could no longer have children, he grieved for a few days and then moved on. At the time, he had just joined a new department and was focused on climbing the ranks, relying on connections. On the surface, he started dating me. But deep down, he always believed I had used my power to force him into submission. He hated me, resented me to the core. That's why he humiliated me again and again in public. Between the three of us, there was never a winner. Now, everyone had returned to their rightful place. Maybe that's what it meant to finally be on the right path. Ever since Ethan ran away from the wedding, my father had carried a heavy sense of guilt. There had originally been 2 potential suitors for me. He had favored Ethan, saying he was no ordinary man and destined for greatness. He wasn't wrong. Ethan's achievements in our past life were known across the country. But no matter how great he was, I didn't want him anymore. I had thought long and hard. In this world, women are still expected to marry. A few decades from now, even strong single women would still face gossip and judgment, let alone now. Since I had to marry, I decided to pick the most solid, dependable choice. When my father heard that I wanted to marry Sterling, he was stunned. "Sweetheart, let's choose carefully this time," he said. "You don't need to settle for either of those 2 trees. I'll help you look at other families." But I shook my head and stood firm. "Dad, it's him. Ask him if he's willing to marry me." Thinking back to our past life, I wasn't even sure myself, but he probably would say yes. Back then, when that tall, strong, sun-darkened man found out I was getting married, he came running, drenched in sweat. But when he saw me in my red wedding dress, he turned away in silence. After that, every year I received money and supplies, always from the same unknown source. Though the return address was always omitted, I eventually found out it came from the base where Sterling had been stationed. 10 years later, it all stopped. I thought maybe he had moved on, started a family. I was truly happy for him. It wasn't until decades later that I learned the truth. He had died in the line of duty. His name was engraved on a headstone in a martyr cemetery. Next to it, in small letters, were the words, "To my eternal love, Jessica." Someone had tossed me aside like a broken jewel. Someone else had loved me with his entire life in the short time he had. I looked up at the man sitting stiffly in front of me, his whole body tense. On this same day in our past life, he had turned away in sorrow. But in this life, for reasons unknown, he remained by my door, quietly waiting and watching. Well, Sterling, I guess it's just your bad luck. I want to get married, and you're still single, so let's just make do with each other. The man grinned wide, the corners of his eyes warm and glowing with joy. If this is bad luck, I'm thrilled to have it. To leave behind the places and people I hated. My parents took me straight to Northbridge City to move into the courtyard house, my mother's dowry from back in the day. Ever since she brought it over, it had remained untouched. In my past life, when my sister-in-law Anna Miller was throwing tantrums about going abroad, Ethan was livid and firmly objected. My mother-in-law cried under the covers. The house was a war zone every day. Anna begged me through tears. Jessica, please help me think of a way. I only need 300,000 yuan. You'll find a way, won't you? But what way could I possibly have? The Millers played good cop and bad cop with me, subtly pressuring me to sell the house, yet refusing to say anything directly. Even in the 90s, if word got out that a daughter-in-law's dowry was being drained to feed her husband's family, the reputation wouldn't be good. That well-preserved courtyard house was eventually sold for over 600,000 yuan. Anna took 300,000 for her overseas studies. The rest Ethan used to start a business and build his network. Later, when I tried to buy that house back, the price had skyrocketed beyond reach. Even Ethan, with all his resources, had to think twice before making a move. For him, buying it back for me was simply not worth it. But now, this courtyard house had officially been transferred to my name by my mother. It was covered in red decorations, full of joy and laughter. Sterling and I registered our marriage, and with our family as witnesses, became husband and wife in a formal ceremony. Both sets of parents were teary-eyed. Unexpectedly, just after we had bowed to our elders, Sterling received an urgent assignment. He was full of regret, only managing to return for our wedding night. Before he left, he gave me everything he owned, reminding me again and again. Seeing the tension in his brows and eyes, I gave him a gentle smile. I rose on tiptoe and lightly kissed him. "I'll be waiting for you to come home," I said. Sterling's strong hands wrapped around my waist as he rasped, "Okay." I had already decided I would give Sterling everything. My loyalty, my trust. I would be better than I had been in my past life, more patient, more at peace. What I didn't expect was that this version of Sterling was nothing like the quiet, reserved man from before. In our past life, we had only met a few times. He barely spoke. Aside from the intensity in his dark eyes when they swept across me, he showed no emotion. I had assumed he wanted a steady, graceful, and composed wife. I had believed no one could do that better than me. But could someone please tell me what was going on with this passionate, clingy, fiery man? Ever since he returned from that mission, I hadn't been able to leave the bed for a week. In moments of overwhelming emotion, I kicked him in frustration, only for him to grab my ankle, rest it on his shoulder, and respond with even more intensity. My parents and in-laws had moved in together after our wedding. My mother and mother-in-law got along well. They each bought a courtyard next door, and now the two families played chess, knitted, and cooked together daily. They never interfered with our lives, only watching over us quietly from the sidelines. But lately I noticed our meals had changed. Specific dishes began appearing. Scrambled eggs with chives, spicy pork kidneys, goji berry chicken soup. My face flushed bright red, lowering a little more each day. Only Sterling, shameless as ever, had the nerve to comment on the food. "Mom, this soup's a little too salty," he said. "Dad, today's fish smells muddy. Let it soak a few days next time before cooking." No matter what he requested, both dads nodded readily. Sterling grinned smugly. "I'm riding your coattails. If I asked for the moon, Dad would probably figure out a way to catch it just so I could taste it." Our parents had long since resigned themselves to the idea that I might never marry. I blushed and pinched Sterling's waist. Instead of backing off, he leaned in with a grin. "Sweetheart, how about a few more kisses here too?" he whispered, tapping his cheek. "When I'm out on missions, I live off those memories just to feel close to you." While I stayed home, waiting peacefully, every month without fail, I received a package and a letter from him. Wildflowers dried on the mountain, seashells from the coast, breathtaking photos of distant landscapes. Each letter from Sterling overflowed with love. Jessica, no mountain blossom is more beautiful than you. None more radiant. Jessica, I whispered. I love you into a seashell. Listen closely. Do you hear my voice, Jessica? Even the clouds in the sky resemble your silhouette. I miss you so much, Jessica. I love you. Sterling had brought order and stability to my life. I didn't have to run around scrambling to cover household expenses like in my past life. I no longer had to worry about feeding a big family, my sister-in-law's grades, or my mother-in-law's herbal tonics. I didn't have to wake up early to serve others or stay up late catering to everyone's needs. Like my maternal grandmother, I had a gift for handiwork. No matter how complex or intricate the pattern, I could see through it at a glance and reproduce it exactly. In my previous life, Ethan's boss, a bold and cheerful older woman, loved the trendy clothing featured in magazines from Hong Kong and Taiwan. Ethan had asked me to help him out, so I forced my still recovering postpartum body to recreate an exact replica of a piece she liked. It hit the mark perfectly. From then on, she became a loyal client. I tailored custom pieces for her every year, never disappointing her. For decades, whenever Ethan encountered trouble, she would step in and solve it, even without me having to ask. She smoothed the road for his entire business empire. When she eventually retired, Ethan never once visited her again, not even a phone call. When I brought her a freshly sewn coat one day, she was lounging in a rocking chair outside. This legendary doctor smiled at me with a sigh. Jessica, you're too sincere for your own good. What are you going to do with a heart like that? Thinking of everything Sterling had done for me, I decided I wanted to give back, even just a little. I learned that his commanding officer's mother, an elegant older woman, was especially fond of traditional silk chip pao from Suzhou and Hanzhou. I used the few chances I had to meet her, staying up night after night to make a few pieces just right. When I finally brought them out, my eyes were bloodshot from exhaustion. Sterling's lips quivered, his eyes gleaming. Sweetheart, he said. I'll earn my own future. I married you so you could live well. Trust me, I can do this. My wife should be talented and free to pursue what she loves. If you want to make this your hobby or career, I'll support you. Just don't let it become a burden because of me. I looked at his vibrant, smiling face, and all I could think of was the stark contrast with the somber photo engraved on the gravestone in my past life. The emotion swelled inside me, too much for words. I opened my mouth, but instead of a response, I let out a series of dry heaves. I was pregnant. Sterling and our parents were completely stunned, dizzy with joy. My in-laws rushed back to the ancestral home that very night to light incense and bow to our ancestors, thanking them for their blessing. Sterling, they said, had finally proven useful. Before returning to his unit, Sterling bragged shamelessly, shooting off at the mouth. Old man, if anyone should be bowing, it's to my wife. Without her, this family would have ended with you. He didn't even finish the sentence before my mother-in-law smacked him out the door with a feather duster. Sterling reluctantly returned to base. Far from neglecting me, my in-laws poured all their energy into taking care of me. When they heard that free-range eggs from the countryside were more nutritious than the ones sold in the city, my mother-in-law even traveled back to the village with my mom just to buy fresh eggs. That evening, before they even stepped inside, I heard my father's booming voice from the courtyard. Goddamn that little bastard. I ought to kill him. First, he bails on the wedding just to humiliate us. And now he's out there dragging Jessica's name through the mud again. I'll break his neck. My mom hurried inside, trying to calm my father down as she explained to me what had happened. While passing through Ethan's village, they had run into his mother. Back then, their whole family had gone into hiding just to embarrass us. And now, she actually had the nerve to ask my mom why I hadn't sent Ethan his medicine. She said he was out of pills. Thank God you didn't marry into that family, my mom muttered bitterly. Not a single good one among them. And his little sister, she's in college now, isn't she? She had the gall to ask why I didn't send her money last month. That whole family is a bunch of shameless parasites. Ethan's father used to seem decent, she added after taking a sip of water. Who knew the rest of them would turn out to be such trash? My mother-in-law, who had been holding the basket of eggs, overheard everything but didn't say a word. I was just worried they might still hold a grudge. Even though we hadn't hidden anything from them back then, no husband or parent likes hearing that their daughter-in-law was once left at the altar. It always leaves a bitter taste, Mom said softly. If your mother-in-law's tone has been a little off lately, please just bear with it. Your dad and I can see clearly. Sterling's a good man. This will all pass soon. But that only made my father angrier. Bear with it? Jessica didn't do anything wrong. Worst case, she gets a divorce. I'll take care of her and my grandchild myself. With that, both of them fell silent. The atmosphere grew heavy. I felt uneasy. Would my mother-in-law tell Sterling? If she did, would he think I only married him because I had no other choice? Would he be upset? Probably. With those thoughts lingering, I drifted off uneasily and didn't sleep well. The next morning, my mother-in-law didn't cook or send any dishes over. I wasn't sure if I felt relief or sadness. What struck me more was that my parents weren't home either. Before I could even sort through the thoughts running wild in my mind, I heard loud voices outside the courtyard gate. Fine, let's spare them this time. But if they talk nonsense again, I swear I'll break that brat's legs. Uncle will go with you. Sterling isn't home and he left his wife in our care. If we can't even handle something this small, what kind of sister does that make me? Jessica is such a wonderful person, and that vicious old hag dares to slander her. I'd die of rage if it were me. If I ever see that big-mouthed daughter of theirs again, I'm tearing her lips off. Oh shoot. I forgot to cook for Jessica. What if she's starving? This is all your fault. I told you we should have come straight back after getting the eggs. Where's the hen and the eggs I bought? Who's got them? Here. Here, Auntie. Not a single egg cracked. I held them tight the whole way. Later, my mother-in-law explained that she hadn't taken those awful things Ethan's mom said to heart. The only reason she didn't argue back was because she was afraid of dropping the basket of eggs. It was winter, and hens rarely laid eggs this time of year. She had gone to multiple households to gather enough to help nourish me. The moment she got home, she told my father-in-law everything. Together with other relatives, they went straight to confront Ethan's family, and even reported the incident to both the police and the village chief. Ethan's mother finally admitted that her claim Jessica had already slept with my son was a complete fabrication. My mother-in-law, a retired teacher, threw aside all decorum and slapped that woman across the face repeatedly, shouting, "Jessica is such a good girl. Your son didn't deserve her. If I ever hear you slander my daughter-in-law again, I'll rip your filthy mouth off." Then she slammed several $100 bills into my hand. "This is compensation from that nasty old woman for the damage to your reputation. Here's her written apology too." When she saw the police show up, she sobbed and begged for mercy, claiming she was momentarily possessed. "Jessica, don't be scared. Sterling may not be here, but your father-in-law and I will protect you." When my parents got the news and rushed over, they were shocked and remorseful, scolding my in-laws for not taking them along. But my mother-in-law simply waved them off with confidence. My own child was being wronged. We know how to handle our own business. The next time I saw Ethan and Emily Tang was 5 years later on a street in downtown Northbridge. It was clear Ethan had seized the advantage of this second life, and was now thriving. The two of them wore the latest designer clothes and drove a sleek sedan. When they saw me standing by the roadside waiting for a ride, I saw the smugness flash across their faces. Ethan frowned and stiffened. "Jessica, I just mailed you something 3 days ago. So you've been following me after all." He threw a business card at me impatiently. "Whatever. I don't want to talk here. Come to this address tonight. I've got something for you to do." Emily's gaze flickered. She bit her lip and glared at me with resentment. Before I could say a word, the two of them got into the car, started the engine and drove off. A few minutes later, Shioen arrived, soaked in sweat, screeching the car to a halt. "Sis-in-law. Something came up at the unit. Am I late?" I waved him off reassuringly. "I just got here too. You're right on time. Let's go." Before getting in the car, I casually tossed Ethan's business card into the nearest trash can. For years ago, I gave birth to our daughter Wayne. Soon after, Sterling received an assignment transferring him thousands of miles away to Northbridge. Neither our parents nor his wanted us to live apart, but they also couldn't bear to be away from their granddaughter. They were torn. I wasn't in a rush. While taking care of our daughter, I applied to university and pursued a degree in medicine. This year, Wayne started preschool and quickly formed her own little social circle. She had become utterly spoiled by both sets of grandparents and had grown used to the northern climate. She flatly refused to come with me. After discussing it with Sterling and getting Wayne's approval, we decided to let her stay behind with our parents while I headed off to reunite with him in Northbridge. Maybe the experiences from my previous life had left too deep a mark on me. Even though I still loved making things with my hands, I could no longer bring myself to hold scissors or needles. They made me feel tense and on edge. Gradually, I developed a real interest in medicine. Sterling encouraged me, saying, "Sweetheart, we're meant to be good with our hands. If you can't hold an embroidery needle, try a scalpel instead. No matter what you want to do, I've got your back." Once I got my degree, I applied for a transfer to the military hospital where Sterling was stationed. Today was my first official day reporting in. I never expected that in a city this big, I'd run into people I least wanted to see. On the very first day, I didn't take Ethan's words to heart at all. Neither he nor Emily Tang stirred even the slightest ripple in my emotions. So Sterling and I went to work as usual, completely unbothered by whatever chaos Ethan might be dealing with. Ethan, on the other hand, kept glancing at his watch, pacing back and forth in frustration. "It's almost 8, he muttered. "Why isn't Jessica here yet?" Director Gao would be arriving in a few days, and Ethan was desperate to make a good impression. He remembered all too well how tough it had been working under him in the beginning. It wasn't until 3 years later, when Jessica's tailoring skills happened to match Gao's tastes, that things finally smoothed out. By bringing Jessica in early this time, he was certain he could win Director Gao's favor much sooner than in their past life. The thought of Jessica made Ethan chuckle idiotically. She was still the same as before, hopelessly devoted to him, which was perfect. He had always planned to let her suffer for a few years, make her eat dirt, and once she was thoroughly humbled, he would take her back. After all, in their past life, she had been utterly sincere, earning the approval of both his mother and sister, and even giving birth to an exceptional son who was just like him. Emily had given him a son this time too, though unfortunately, the child looked nothing like him. That made Ethan miss his past life even more, though he wasn't sure whether it was the son or the status he longed for. Getting a second shot at life, and the chance to fix past regrets was undoubtedly thrilling. But starting from scratch again? That part sucked. Right now, he was just a mid-level officer with a bit of cash, not even close to the powerful figure he used to be. Still, he wasn't worried. Jessica would be here soon. Once she helped him win over Director Gao, and once he sold the house in the Northbridge suburbs to fund his comeback with his experience and money, he was confident he'd be back on top within 10 years. As for the news his mother and sister brought up about Jessica getting married, Ethan didn't believe it for a second. That had to be a story Jessica's family made up to save face after he bailed on the wedding. Nothing more. If there was one thing Ethan was sure of, it was this. The Jessica of his past life was the kind of woman who, once she gave her heart, gave it completely. That was exactly why in this life, even if he kept Emily as a mistress, he would still marry Jessica. No one made a better wife than she did. Emily smiled brightly as she sat across from him. "Miss Jessica, try this coffee. The beans are imported from Brazil and ground by hand. The flavor is really rich." He was beyond exasperated. He had no idea what these two were trying to pull. He was just out shopping for some household essentials, and somehow ended up cornered by Emily. What were the odds? She took a sip of coffee, hesitated, and looked at me with forced sweetness. "Jessica, I've been waiting here for you for days. Last time you didn't come to the house. I thought maybe you lost the business card. So, you really came back here. I didn't think I'd actually run into you." Emily said, "My son with Ethan is already 4 years old now. You should visit our home sometime." She smiled gently. "What happened before was our fault, mine and Ethan's. But love itself isn't wrong. We really hope we can have your blessing." "Oh, I see now." Emily Tang was trying to blur the timeline, make it sound like she got pregnant with Ethan's child again after their relationship became official. She probably didn't know that just yesterday, Ethan came to me with full confidence, demanding I return to the Miller family. He'd said he couldn't make things hard for Emily, that she was so kind that she'd rather get an abortion than interfere with my happiness. He told me, "Jessica, from now on, you'll be the main wife. Emily will be the second. Her child will call you Mom too." He even added, "This kind of arrangement is common in Zhang. What successful man doesn't have multiple wives and mistresses? I hope you two can live in harmony." I'd always known these two were delusional in the last life, but I never imagined just how far that delusion could go. And then, right as Emily was calmly eating cake, her son, breathing fast and shallow, collapsed onto the ground. My instincts as a doctor kicked in. Before I could think, I rushed over to give first aid. It was clearly an acute allergic reaction. His airway was swelling. We had to get him to the hospital immediately. As I scrambled to help, Emily, who seconds ago had looked composed and poised, burst into tears and threw herself into the arms of the man rushing through the door. "Ethan, save our son," she cried. "I just wanted to bring him to meet Jessica." Who knew Jessica would deliberately give him mango? I told her over and over again that Coco is allergic. Ethan turned to me with a fury that could burn cities. He stormed toward me, raising his hand to slap. But before his palm could land, I caught his wrist and pressed down hard on a pressure point. His face instantly went pale, drenched in sweat. What a joke! Did he think we med students were pushovers? Our professors pushed us like we were training to carry bulls on our backs. "Jessica, how could you do this to a child?" he shouted. "You're disgusting. I never realized you were such a vile woman. I should have kept you in line longer." As Ethan continued spewing nonsense, I couldn't take it anymore. "Shut up," I snapped. "Take him to the hospital now." Even as the doctors began treatment, I hadn't yet left when Emily, still crying, grabbed my sleeve, demanding an explanation. Moments later, Ethan's mother and sister barged in. "Oh, my sweet grandson, my heart is breaking," his mom cried. Anna Miller glared at me as if she'd rip me apart while Ethan held the weeping Emily and murmured words of comfort. Emily peeked at me through teary eyes, then buried her face deeper into Ethan's arms. He turned face cold and barked, "Jessica, apologize." I had no interest in entertaining this ridiculous circus. I stood up to leave, but Ethan grabbed my arm. As we struggled, a voice behind me asked, puzzled, "Director John, what are you doing here? We're still waiting on you for the meeting." I turned to see several interns passing by. Young, one of the new arrivals, was among them. Without hesitation, they came over and politely separated me from the deranged Miller entourage. Behind me, Ethan's voice rang out in confusion. "Wait, what did you call her?" "Director Zhang." One of the interns replied brightly, "Of course, Director Zhang just transferred to our hospital. She's a top graduate from North Medical University, Professor Changing's most prized student." That evening, just after work, I stepped out of the hospital only to find Ethan waiting at the entrance. "Jessica," he said slowly, "you've been reborn too, haven't you?" I wasn't even surprised he'd figured it out. Back in our past life, I once injured my ankle climbing with Director Gao. A young female doctor treated my wound with such elegant, precise movements that I was completely captivated. For months after that, I practiced suturing at home, fascinated by what tiny needles could do beyond just sewing clothes. Ethan, of course, had been completely dismissive back then. "If you can become a doctor," he sneered, "then pigs can climb trees." I looked at him with absolute disdain. "Well, I am a doctor now. I wonder if the pigs in your family have learned to climb trees yet." Ethan's face flushed red. He immediately snapped, "You clearly came back to life earlier. Why didn't you come looking for me? You knew I was about to meet Director Gao. You know Director Gao only likes clothes made by you." Ethan said, "You're doing this on purpose. You want to see me suffer, don't you? You want me to beg." He scoffed. "Let me tell you something. I'm doing all this for our future. Don't you want to live that high society life again, just like before? Quit your hospital job. Go back to designing clothes. You can help take care of my mom while you're at it. You've been a doctor for a few years now. You should be more experienced with elder care. That works out perfectly." I was utterly sick of that entitled, self-righteous face of his. In my past life, I already knew he was the type to kick you when you're down and burn the bridge after crossing it. But I hadn't realized just how disgustingly self-important he could be. As the end of the workday approached, familiar colleagues began trickling out in twos and threes. They eyed me and Ethan curiously as we stood at the hospital entrance. Ethan, smug and full of himself, stepped forward to grab my hand with a look of certainty. I immediately pulled my hand back and glared. "Take one more step, and I'll call security. This is a military hospital. The guards here could take down 3 of you with one hand. And stop flattering yourself. I'm already married." Ethan froze, stunned. "That's impossible," he stammered. "You wouldn't marry anyone but me." A voice cut in. "She did marry me legally, officially. National marriage law recognizes us as lifelong partners. And who are you to question that?" I turned in surprise. Sterling was striding toward me, taking my hand and interlocking our fingers tightly. He didn't care about the onlookers. His eyes were only on me. "I thought you weren't supposed to be back until tomorrow," I whispered. He lowered his head, his voice husky. "I missed you." I caught the night train back. Behind us, Ethan shouted, chasing after us in frustration. But Sterling's unit guard stopped him and kept him far away. From a distance, I could still hear his hysterical yelling. "Jessica, you can only marry me. You're mine." Sterling held my hand, grinning like a fool, whispering as he twined his fingers tighter with mine. "A little separation makes reunion sweeter." Every time he said that, I honestly worried I might die of embarrassment. How was it that I, a respectable medical student, always ended up half dead in bed with this man? Sterling would just smile lazily, pull the blanket over both of us and say, "Sweetheart, you worry too much. Even your old professor at NT said you were the toughest student he ever taught, physically and mentally. You'll be fine." A couple of months later, I volunteered to go on assignment for a teaching rotation. When I returned to Northbridge, it was already deep autumn. My coworkers told me that some strange man had been standing outside the hospital every single day, rain or shine, showing up exactly at the start and end of each shift like clockwork. Intern Young described it in vivid detail. At first, security thought he was some kind of creep, but then they saw he was just standing there like an idiot, clearly waiting for someone. They stopped bothering him after a while. "Director Jang, you should have seen it. He's actually kind of good-looking, but this big guy just stood there crying. Scared the hell out of us." Young had barely finished gossiping when, sure enough, the very next day I found Ethan waiting for me outside the hospital gates. Seeing the security guards watching him closely, I raised my hand gently to calm them down. "Jessica, I was wrong," Ethan blurted, panic in his voice. "I was too arrogant. I see that now. Please come back to me." He was crying, rambling desperately. "We were married for years in our last life. We had a son. You're supposed to be with me. We even registered our marriage. You can leave him. I don't care. I'll still marry you." I looked at him, calm and tired. "Ethan, after you ran out on our wedding, I was relieved. I said when I woke up in this life, I was terrified that I might have already married you. So the moment you ditched me, I went into town and reclaimed our marriage application." He stood frozen, stunned. "I've been married for years," I continued. "I have a daughter, a beautiful, sweet little girl. She doesn't have to tiptoe between her dad and grandma. She's surrounded by people who love her unconditionally." Thinking back to the past, Ethan opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Finally, with red eyes, he muttered, "Jessica, I know I was wrong. I just wanted to let you cool off for a few years. I never intended to let you go. I wrote you a letter every year, but I only just found out that Emily was hiding them from you. You see, it wasn't my fault." Ethan pleaded, "Just give me another chance. Think about our son. He looks just like me. So smart. So promising. Please, Jessica. I really was wrong." I was beyond fed up with Ethan's endless clinging and groveling. But I thought of the promise I made to Sterling, and I held back. Sterling had once said that if I couldn't shut this leech of a man down myself, he'd rather take the disciplinary hit and get rid of him his way. So I laid Ethan's intentions bare. "Ethan, the only thing you're unwilling to let go of is the return on investment you think I bring. I could handle your home and advance your career, but now that you've finally gotten your precious Emily Tang, you've realized she isn't worth all that fantasy you built around her. You figured out that no one could give you more value as a wife than I did. And as for that son of yours who looks just like you, I'm even more relieved I'm not part of his life. He's just like you, selfish, cold, demanding the whole world bend to him. Whether you've learned your lesson or not means nothing to me. In my past life, I did everything a wife, a mother, and a daughter-in-law was supposed to do. But marrying into your family was the most disgusting mistake I ever made. You have no idea how many nights I spent regretting it. Toward the end, even just seeing your face made me sick, just like it does now. Ethan's face went pale. He stumbled backward and collapsed to the ground, mumbling in disbelief. How could this be? I turned my back on him with disgust. Don't ever let me see you again for the rest of your life, Ethan. You really don't want to find out what my husband does to people he sees as threats. And just like that, Ethan and his entire family vanished from my life for good. Sterling, of course, got jealous. You hesitated, he pouted. You didn't want me to hit him, did you? I rolled my eyes at him. Idiot. He's not even worth one strand of your hair. You think I'd risk your career over trash like that? Miffed, he softened instantly, like a lion having its mane brushed the right way. Years later, I did end up forming a connection with Director Gal, but not by gifting clothes like before. In our past life, she had suffered from severe asthma. Once on a business trip, she nearly died. I reminded her about a few preventive measures, and she was incredibly touched and thankful. While chatting casually one day, she mentioned something funny. A few years ago, one of my subordinates kept trying to give me these flashy, over-the-top luxury outfits every time we met, regardless of the setting. It was so annoying and mismatched with my style. I couldn't stand it. Eventually, I had him transferred far from headquarters just to get some peace. Later, she heard that same subordinate had gone into business after leaving the military. Northbridge had been one of the first cities to benefit from reform and opening up, so starting a business wasn't unusual, but he had funded his ventures with loan shark money. His projects flopped, and no one wanted to back him. He lost everything. Then his mistress left him a letter and disappeared with their son. In the letter, she confessed the boy wasn't even his, that he was the result of her first love. The real father had come back into their lives, and he was the one she truly loved. She thanked him for having once accepted her and her child so generously. And now she hoped he'd understand why she took what little savings they had left. After all, the boy had once called him Dad. When his elderly mother found out that the grandson she had loved for years wasn't really blood, she suffered a stroke and died just days later in the hospital. That man, utterly broken, was last seen sitting by the roaring river, clutching a stack of letters, no one knowing what he was thinking. After that he vanished. No one ever saw him again. I heard the story and forgot it almost instantly, like any tragic anecdote you might hear in passing. Meanwhile, Sterling spent the next several years missing our daughter terribly. Every summer and winter break, he tried to sweet-talk her into visiting and staying longer. Both sets of grandparents weren't thrilled about this little tug-of-war over affection. I once brought up the idea of having another child. Sterling just pulled me into his arms and smiled, shaking his head. We made a promise, remember? Just one boy or girl. Just one. All our love goes to that child. That's more than enough. He kissed my forehead. Jessica, besides you, I only have room in my heart to love one more person. Any more than that, and it wouldn't be whole anymore. And so we lived our life hand in hand all the way to old age. He defended the country. I saved lives. When Sterling was 82, surrounded by children and grandchildren, he lay peacefully in my arms and closed his eyes for the last time. As I sorted through his belongings, I found our wedding photo tucked inside a book he'd kept hidden all those years. The two of us, young and leaning into each other, looked sweet but a little unfamiliar. On the back of the photo, in strong handwriting that nearly bled through the paper, it read, "Jessica, my forever love."